We're talking about HeroClix Pauper coming right up. Mr. Clicks Flick is brought to you by Lucky Dice Cafe out of Huntsville, Alabama, home of the ROC. No matter if you're in the United States or around the world, Lucky Dice Cafe has the winning roll for all your gaming needs. You can visit them at luckydicecafe.com or on their Facebook page using the link found in the description of this video. Mr. Clicks Flicks is also brought to you by trollandtoad.com, one of the largest online gaming retailers. Use the promo code Mr. Clicks Flicks for 5% off your HeroClix order today. Alright guys, so today joining me is the head of the HeroClix Pauper League format, Mr. Chris Cottrell. He's been doing this for at least a whole year, and he's involved with basically any name that you'd want to be involved with. Chris is helping them out, and I was fortunate enough to meet him in person at Origins this year, 2019. So Chris, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so for people that don't know you or aren't aware of you, if they wanted to find you online, where could they do something like that?
Well, you can find my blog if you look up Clicksbait. That's my weekly blog. There's also a Facebook page for it. That's primarily where you can reach me. You can also reach out and join the HeroClix Pauper League Facebook page, and I keep track of what goes on there as well.
Yep, but all that's very informative. I always enjoy your Clicksbait articles. They're always a fun thing to look at. So you make sure to keep that up. And I understand, running the whole league is a big deal, and it's a big undertaking. So I imagine that takes up quite a bit of time, right?
It has taken up quite a bit of time. There were a couple of weeks there where we were really trying to fix the format, preparing for states and everything that really demanded a lot more time than I was expecting. But we finally got it worked out, and I was happy to do so. I'm glad that I've actually got a team now helping out rather than just me.
yeah, most excellent. Yeah, it's hard when it's a one-man show. So yeah. We're going to talk about that stuff later, about how we came up with what the ROC State Championship format is this year. But first, for those of us that might not know anything about HeroClix or HeroClix Pauper League, how did that get started? Because it's only been going about a year, correct?
Yeah, we started the Pauper circuit actually about a year ago now. We had a very short first season. Mm-hmm. We actually did a prelude to the season in November, I think, of last year, mm-hmm. and then ran the first season of the circuit from January to June. And then later on in June, we actually had the first Pauper Circuit Championship. Mm-hmm. Now, honestly, where the idea came from, you have something to do with that, because I caught one of your videos talking about the Everyman project that was started by Married with Clicks, and it very much caught my interest, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. But I wasn't really comfortable with the way that the format was set up initially, mm-hmm. Just because I felt that just having the commons and the fast forces pieces, one was going to limit the piece choices too much. And the second problem with it was some of those, especially at the time I was looking at, some of those fast forces pieces were just so powerful that if you built your team just with those, then odds are you were going to wreck anything else there, like the mm-hmm. starter Hulk and the giant girls from the Fast Forces. Mm-hmm. I was just worried that they were going to overwhelm the format. Mm-hmm. So looking at that, and the other piece to it was actually the distribution in HeroClix. The original idea, of course, comes from Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
So, they have a Pauper format where everything is commons there. But the thing about it is Magic distribution is a lot different than HeroClix distribution in the packs and such. Mm-hmm. HeroClix players end up getting a lot more uncommons than what a Magic player ends up with. Mm-hmm. So keeping that in mind, we thought it wasn't going to be a huge deal adding the uncommons to the environment. And we also liked the fact that it allowed for some of the colossals that came in Avengers Infinity, and now with the new X-Men animated series. We also liked the idea that it allowed for a couple pieces of equipment, although you don't see them terribly often. They are there, and they are options for your builds.
Yeah, I definitely like it a lot. I like what you did with the format. Like Chris said, we started it with, I started talking about it because I kept hearing about it on, I've never played Magic, but for some reason there's a few Magic the Gathering YouTube channels that I watch, just because they're good entertainers, and they were talking about it. And then I believe before I mentioned anything, Married with Clicks might have mentioned something first about their Everyman for Everyone. And it just, to me, it was a good idea because, one, it varies up the meta game and the builds, so you're able to utilize more of your collection, because I'm sure you know, Chris, and some people watching, when you end up building for just your standard 300-point competitive, you'll see maybe one or two uncommons or a common every once in a while, but it's mostly super rares and chases that people are using, occasionally a prime. And to me, it's nice to give those other figures a time to shine, because they're good. They're just not always quite as good for the points as those other figures. And also for putting value in the packs, because a big complaint of some HeroClix players, and I know something that I roll my eyes about too, is that when you open the pack, if there's not a super rare in it, you tend to have lost money. And it's not always about that. It's about playing with the game and having fun. But sometimes it's nice to be able to get rid of one or two things in your boosters and quote unquote play for free. And when you do the Pauper format, you make it so that maybe a nickel uncommon, if it's a really good one, it ends up being $1 or something like that.
Medusa.
And you get enough of those, and then now all of a sudden your boosters, as soon as you open them, are worth at least what you paid, which was part of my goal whenever I first brought it up too. So, but yeah, it's been fun. I've done a few Pauper tournaments at my venue. I was fortunate enough that Chris asked me to judge the first Pauper Championship, so that was really fun to get to be there in person and see how the people played and the different builds that were there. So that was fun. So you've been at it for years. Is there anything that you learned or wish you could do different, or that you're planning on changing for the next year?
Well, the championship actually was one of the things that I still haven't figured out how to deal with a situation quite like that, because just as the championship was coming around, the new set hit, and we weren't prepared for Medusa. I mean, there's just no other way around that. Medusa was a surprisingly powerful piece, and it kind of overwhelmed the scene. And we're still looking at options now. Because of that, we have left the door open for the possibility of banning pieces if they become too much of an overbearing piece on the environment, because let's face it, you want to have fun, and so you want to encourage creativity, and in order to encourage that creativity, you can't have one team being the only team that can be played if you want to win.
Right. Yep.
So we've learned to be a bit vigilant about that. Outside of that, prior to Medusa hitting, we had a lot of really creative builds, and I enjoyed seeing what people came up with. I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with now.
Yeah, it's definitely fun, and all the formats have a hiccup. I can remember that long ago when the regular 300-point format, it was Metatron and Nightcrawler, or Metatron and Kid Flash, and that was basically it. So all the builds, they go through their hiccups, but I like what you did with how it's going to be this year for the ROC states, which we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes. But just as a spoiler, I guess, a little bit, is they ended up going with a Highlander rule, at least for this go round, which is cool. And pretty much all the other major games, right, they have either a limited or banned list, where it's something's either completely banned or it's limited from 3 to 1 or something like that. So it makes sense that HeroClix would be that way too. And it's nice to people need to understand that you need to reserve the right to maybe limit something, maybe ban it and then come back and be like, well, maybe it's not banned. We'll do a limit of 1 or a limit of 2 per force in certain cases. It's kind of a learning curve too for stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did see, speaking of ROC and ROC states, you did get picked up by the ROC as a semi-official format through them. So how did that go about? How'd that happen? Because I was super excited to see a big thing like the ROC pick up Pauper.
Well, Howard Brock had been sending me messages here and there, and we had been, discussing back and forth. And he's really been looking for an alternate format to push, especially since WizKids didn't seem to really be happy with the idea of the limited format. Mm-hmm. So he was looking for another alternative format that they would be on board with, and it seemed like Pauper was going really well. Now, there was the hiccup because of the whole Medusa situation, mm-hmm. and he felt that the solution to that was going to be to go Highlander. Mm-hmm. We had discussed it in the council, and we're looking at a restricted list. Mm-hmm. And so we discussed it some, and after speaking with some of the venues that were running Pauper Circuit events, mm-hmm. The venues were behind the idea of having the Highlander as well. So we finally agreed upon going with the Extreme Highlander rule and making sure that was the way things rolled. Once we had that agreed upon, Howard actually went back to WizKids and sold them on the idea. And so we had a few finishing touches that we had to put on a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Some people who read my blog may have noticed the incorrect information that I put at first, and then it got backed up, and we finally got the details hammered out. Mm-hmm. But it was like an 11th hour thing on some of them.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, you mentioned it, but WizKids did get involved, right? So that's about as official as you can get, right? Is with the company that makes them trying to get involved there.
Yeah, I will say it's certain representatives within WizKids that are working with us right now. So they have approved this format for states, which is fantastic. It's a little bit early to say it's an official format, but we're hoping things go well with states. If they do, of course, those will also lead into our Eastern and Western championships, and finally a national championship. So if all of that goes well, then we may win over the entirety of WizKids and have this as an official format.
That'd be nice. I really hope that we're able to do that. This goes as well as I think it's going to go, and as well as I hope it goes, because if we can get this going, then that opens the door for other formats also. Because I love Pauper. But I'd like to see other things happen too, just, even in an experimental way, just as a different way to play HeroClix. So it's always fun to see things like that. So as far as WizKids go, are they who had a hand in the WWE Clicks come out next month, and they got approved to be part of the Pauper format, correct?
Correct. We had to get some clarification on what the rarity was considered on those pieces. I know there's been a lot of talk that, well, they've got bronze tabs, and all of that. And some people are actually concerned about the power level of the pieces, maybe overshadowing what else is out there. But ultimately, the decision was made because, one, they are readily available to anybody who wants to pick them up. So this is not one of those things where you have to dig through pack after pack after pack to get the piece that you want for your team. And I had another point, and it's completely jumped out of my mind.
Man. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they do. These are non-blind. So for people that don't know, the WWE Clicks, they're all non-blind. You always know what you're getting. They have a different set of powers and abilities that go with them, but they are compatible with HeroClix. But as far as I know, there's no like you know how they'll have like the vinyl pops where it's like there's chase figures even though they're non-blind. Also,
Yeah.
there's none of that, I believe, with that stuff.
Yeah, I've been given no indication that there's any of that.
Yeah.
And now remember, speaking of the power level of the pieces,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've had people say, well, these are going to overtake whatever you've got going on. But then I've got the same people saying that Avengers is still going to rule the day. I've got people who say that, you know, Juggernaut is going to take over the format.
Yeah.
And generally, you know, when you have that many pieces competing for attention,
Mm-hmm.
that means you've got a pretty balanced format in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really balanced, and like we talked about earlier, you know, sometimes you just gotta let things fly. And if you see during the state process, I would assume if something ends up being a problem, that you would go back and as a group with you and Howard and WizKids and figure out what it needs to happen to fix that. So I would still advise everybody just go play in your state. See how it goes, because the only way that we're going to make this, you know, a fantastic format and get it, you know, officially sponsored is if we all go and play and we're able to give WizKids some feedback. If nobody goes and plays, then they're not going to have any feedback. They're just going to think that it didn't do well. But I like them a lot. I view them as kind of like the Fast Forces, where it's, you know, even though the Fast Forces have a white tab, you know what you're getting. So I'm hoping that it's similar to that. I think some of them could be pretty powerful, but like you said, I don't see them totally running away with it. But I mean, who knows? Maybe somebody out there that's really good isn't talking about a build, and we'll just see it states.
Well, see, and well, actually, I don't know that the WWE pieces are coming out until after states. I may be wrong on that. But the other part to that is, you know, by part of the reason why we allowed Fast Forces and starter sets
Mm-hmm.
after we had initially said no,
Mm-hmm.
was because of the Highlander rule. You know,
Right.
you're now not going to see a team with, you know, 3 of the Fast Forces Hulks or
Yeah.
20 of the Fast Forces Giant Girls. You know,
Yeah.
so by opening up that diversity, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for those WWE pieces to so far take over, but
Right.
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, and you know, we'll revisit it. So so WizKids got involved. So the builds, have you done any building with the Highlander format or anything like that? I know I've been doing a little bit myself. I have a pretty good Sentinel team that's actually one figure off from what Jason talked about on his going into the mind of HeroClix madness. I laughed so hard when I saw his video. I was like, well, I can't make that video now because it seems like I'm copying. But Sentinel's really strong. Avengers are strong. WWE's strong. Is there anything that you're really interested in right this second, without, you know, tipping your hand too much if that's not your thing?
Oh, well, I mean, in this week's blog, I actually have thrown up a team that I'm looking at running, because I do think point denial is going to be a thing now.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been before, but there is an opportunity to play this team.
Mm-hmm.
The only question I have with that particular team is a different version of point denial, which would be the 300-point Juggernaut.
Yep.
Because that thing is a beast. I mean, it's really, really difficult to take down. It can continue to heal if it's on the right map.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a chance that it'll get on the right map against point denial because you're not going to be running a theme team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've also been looking at an X-Men team, which I really like the way that works. The new beast that does the +2 perplex is really, really nice. Let's see. I posted a couple of weeks back a robot build based around 175-point Nimrod.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I don't like about that particular build is it's very, very luck based. You know, you've got to have that roll to beat your match or beat your opponent's roll in order to do the feedback damage. But it's always something that people are going to be worrying about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, my dice never seem to work out for things like that, so I know 100% I would be taking feedback damage. But yeah, no, so there definitely seems to be a lot of builds. I'm really excited to see how it goes for states. I want to see that stuff, and I'll have coverage here, and Chris will have stuff on his blog and stuff like that. So what future plans do you have for Pauper? You guys got anything cooking on the back burner you want to talk about?
Well, of course, right now we're looking at where we're going to be having the Eastern and Western championships, and I can tell you right now that we do know where we're going to have them. We haven't finalized the dates on them. I can tell you this time around the the Eastern Championship is going to be held at Origins, just like
Okay.
the overall championship was held last year. So it's going to be back at Heroes and Games there in Columbus,
Yep.
and then the Western Championship is going to be held by probably our strongest supporter out in the West Coast, which is at Gongai Games.
Okay.
So, I'm really looking forward to finalizing the plans with them. I'm looking, it's kind of funny. The first season was very much more of an East Coast phenomenon than anything out West. You had a few players a few events out West, but now I've got a lot more interest out West, and the East Coast has got to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really fun format that I encourage people to try and play. Some people were worried that it wasn't going to be very competitive, but there are some phenomenal pieces at those rarity levels that are devastatingly good. Like, they're out of this world. So I'm happy to see them get a little bit of shine and people looking at them more closely. And it makes the game of HeroClix more accessible. I can give somebody a team and I can be like, here, you're competitive, and it costs you $15 maybe. So just stuff like that I feel is good.
Yeah, I feel like it's really a gateway format, because
Yes.
you can introduce new players to this, and they don't have to put out a lot of money to compete in their first event.
Yeah.
And they get the taste of it to decide, okay, is this something that I want to continue to do, and do I want to go on into the meta per se, or do I want to continue doing Pauper? And either way, it's viable,
Right. And I like it too, just as an alternate format to keep people on their toes as far as builds and creativity go. It's easy to kind of get stuck in a rut with, well, I like this team, so this is what I'm going to run. This kind of forces you out of that. And, it's, the people that are good are always going to be good no matter what the format is. But I like the fact that it just makes it so that, if one person can do this and win at something, because they were able to afford to do it, then it was worth the exercise. So I'm really happy that you took it up. I saw you going with it, and I was cheering for you in the back. I was like, come on, Chris, get it. And I'm just happy to see that the ROC and Whiz Kids are giving you a seat at the table to do this for everybody. Make sure to check out Chris's blog. He posts stuff. What is it every week? I feel like there's stuff more
every Sunday.
Every Sunday,
actually.
Yeah. So check his stuff out every Sunday. Go into his Facebook group, check him out there, and make sure to give this video a thumbs up, give it a share. Really keeps us motivated to make these videos and lets YouTube know that people might like to see this video. If you guys have any questions for Chris, make sure to post them in the comments below about HeroClix Pauper, and I will relay those to him, and we might even do a follow-up video or something like that, or maybe he can answer it in a blog post. That might be fun too. So, all right, guys, that's all we have for you today. As always, please remember that it's only critical miss if you don't have probability control.